Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be talking about the markets a little about Turbo, some other coins, and generally what we want from Bitcoin and Bitcoin dominance to happen. I know everyone is on the edge of their seats right now. And, for a lot of people, they wouldn't mind if everything just exploded over the next month and they cashed out. And don't get me wrong, I'd love that too. But I just know that's not very, very realistic. Okay. Listen, if you want a bigger altcoin season, you're going to want two things: Bitcoin to keep rising and the Bitcoin dominance to keep rising. I know that might mean altcoins might take a hit more or less, but for the longer term, it is better. Now, I will just say, just because Bitcoin dominance goes up, that doesn't mean altcoins can't also go up, okay? Because at the end of the day, it's about how much money there is in the market. Now, I'll give you an example. So let's say, hypothetically, we had $1 million in the market, okay? And we had about a 50% dominance, Bitcoin dominance. So that means $500,000 would be in Bitcoin, $500,000 would be in altcoins, okay? Now, let's say we have $10 million in the market, but we have a 70% Bitcoin dominance. So now we have $7 million in Bitcoin and we have $3 million in altcoins. So you can see, even though the dominance is higher, there's generally more money. And that means altcoins have pumped already a massive amount, even though the dominance is quite high, right? And obviously this is a general example. This isn't realistic because we're past $10 million in the market, but you guys get the point. So, you know, it's not a bad thing necessarily for the dominance to be going up, right? Because it doesn't mean there's necessarily less money. Usually when we see the markets really bleeding is when the dominance starts going up, Bitcoin kind of stays the same price and altcoins are bleeding. Because what that means is if Bitcoin is staying the same price, so roughly a flat line, but the dominance is going up, that means altcoins must be bleeding because that means the money is rotating from altcoins into Bitcoin to uphold this level of price. So that is usually when we bleed the most, right? And it's easy for altcoins to bleed because, um, yeah, the market makers, investors know, at the end of the day, these things are just going to come and go. And there's way less money in altcoins in general. And to uphold Bitcoin, it does take a good amount, right? Especially if there's not a lot of money coming into the market. But in general, things are going to be changing. There is going to be a lot of money coming into the market. And the reason why I say this is because we have to realize that we are pretty much retesting the all-time highs right now on this monthly candle, right? We see the previous all-time highs were here for the total market cap in the whole market was pretty much last November. And in this November of 2024, we broke through it. And December is kind of the retest candle. Now, I wouldn't still be surprised if January is also going to try to retest because that's going to be the beginning of the year. But in general, we are here, right? We're retesting the tops. After this happens, we have so much to go, right? We are expected, according to professionals, to go up from 9 to 12 trillion in market cap. Now, for me, I like to look at things very conservative and then analyze my data and change my analysis once we get to a certain point. So for me, my personal target is between the 6 and 9 trillion, right? I think 6 trillion market cap, we still all have a great altcoin season, a great bull run. But in general, obviously the higher, the better. But, I'm not going to reach for something that might be impossible or, that's pushing it, right? One step at a time does not hurt me. But for me, ideally, between the 7 to 8.5 trillion, if that would happen, then I'd be really, really happy with that. Obviously, I wanted to hit 12 trillion. obviously in some kind of universe, going up to 13, 14, 15. But, these things takes time, right? They take a lot of money. And this is just like everything else, right? It's consolidating, it's a cycle. And at the end of the day, it can only move so much before it gasses out and before the market makers say, all right, this is it. These are the tops and we're reversing. So I think at a very dull conservative area, 6 trillion would be the area. On a more realistic, area that I'm happy with would be between 7 to 8 trillion. And then anything pushing that, in my opinion, is exceeding expectations. Even though, like I said, many people are calling between 9 to 12 trillion. But at the end of the day, you have to take news and headlines and data and everything with a grain of salt, right? We see how sometimes news comes out, but the opposite happens. And just don't be oversold on the idea of, like, it's going to go to 12 trillion, 9 trillion, right? One step at a time, one step at a time. And yeah, but you can see in general, we are still pretty early. I mean, we're not that early anymore. Being early would be going back all the way in November and January time, where a decent amount of people got in. And obviously, those couple of months of consolidation. And now this is like the retest for the big bang. Because once we start flying, we're going to be flying high, right? We've seen all these charts before. Now, once we kind of fly, we start flying high. And we're kind of, we're like in this territory right now, right? We're above the all-time highs. We're kind of retesting them. And we can see we chilled around this area for roughly, a month, pretty much a month more or less before we really exploded, which would make sense. The December, January candles being the retest and then the rest just kind of being the pump. That makes the most sense, right? In terms of timing, in terms of the graph. And we can see we actually have kind of a similar data. And yeah, I don't really expect to go below 2.8 trillion. So I don't think the market's going to bleed out too much, right? We still need bigger reversal signs. We do have this nice 4-hour candle, but at the end of the day, we are still on a very weak weekly. And like I said, we are having holidays coming around the corner, right? We are having holidays come around the corner. If I go to something like Forex Factory, which I love Forex Factory because it's really good for Forex trading, what I do. Um, right, we can see Monday there's some news, Canadian news, but then we can see bank holidays. The bank holidays are going to start happening because of Christmas, obviously, around the 24th and the 25th. Everyone's sleeping. The bank's probably going to be the most dead day ever. I will say though, okay, one time I think it was Thanksgiving for America, and the American banks were closed and even the Canadian ones. So I'm not sure if it was that day, but it was a specific day where the American and Canadian banks were quote unquote closed. But let me tell you, gold moved heavy that morning. Okay. It moved heavy. So I was like, okay, if the banks are closed, who's moving these markets? And why is it dumping so hard? I remember that. I was so mad because I was like, you know what? I'm allowing myself to sleep an extra 30 minutes, an hour. And then, I wasn't really looking at the charts because, oh, bank holidays. And next thing you know, things were moving. But I doubt if all the banks are going to be sleeping on the 25th and it's Christmas, I doubt anything's going to be moving. Then obviously the 26th also, even though Americans are back, right, for unemployment claims. But even then, a lot of people are going to be on vacations, right? After that's going to be the weekend. And New Year's. And after New Year's, that's pretty much it, right? Things are going to slowly start happening, right? The beginning of the new yearly candle, which is very, very exciting. I do expect, like I said, this yearly candle to be very, very green. At one point, uh, by the time the yearly candle closes, it's probably going to look like a rejection candle, kind of like, this, right? Where it was really, really solid for a couple months. It went up to a certain amount and then it closed much lower by the end of the year, right? I do think people are looking for a double pump this altcoin season. That is never promised until you get more confirmation of something bottoming out and then reversing. So I'm not going to rely on that. I'm looking to cash out personally from the first pump. I think that is going to be the most ideal. I don't need to get the very top, but near the top, I would be very satisfied. And yeah, I mean, I mean, you need to have your own goals and stuff. And we talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again. You need to have your own goal in preparation, and you need to be prepared because things will be moving very fast, and they could reverse very fast too. So you don't want to see your account, like let's say up to 100K, and then next day back at 60K. That's going to be depressing. And then I know a lot of people's psychology is going to be messed up at that point. So you need to have a plan. You really do need to have a plan, right? Um, it's the most important thing. Preparation is king in these markets. But yeah, so one last thing I want to talk about Bitcoin dominance is, I expect it to go up to like the 69% area, right? And we want that. We want that because the higher something goes, the harder it will fall. Okay. We can even just look based off drawings, right? Imagine altcoin season was this, right? Let's say go back to this relative lows. That's good. But this is better, right? That's an extra what? Couple percent, right? 15%. Imagine getting like 15 to 30, 40, 50% more gains, right? Because just because the dominance is a 15% difference doesn't mean altcoins are only going to go up another 15%. It would go much, much more. So we want to reach these kind of levels. And then from there, we really would want to tank. And to be honest, I'm not sure how hard is going to tank. I will have certain areas set up, but of course, going back down to here or creating new lows would be the most ideal, obviously, but one step at a time, right? One step at a time. Remember, last altcoin season, everything went fast. This was pretty much the beginning of the dump, right? It was about the 2 months mark, 4 to 6 weeks. And then after that, it was kind of over. November, yes, there's opportunities, but for me, I'm looking to get out in the first pump. And yeah, so Bitcoin dominance is still looking good. Everything is looking good in general. If you want more gains, you definitely want Bitcoin dominance to be going up. I hope I explained everything so well to you guys. I love you all so, so much, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.